Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to Momentum Online. My name is Matt, and I'm going to be your online host today. Hey, first and foremost, if you are new, we want to get to know you. We want to know who's on the other side of the screen. But for us to do that, we need you to visit momentumcc.org/connect. So go ahead and fill that out. Also, if giving is a part of your week, you can still give online. You can visit momentumcc.org/giving. And if you have any questions about giving, email us at info@momentumcc.org. Well, today we're in a standalone teaching called Vision Sunday. We're talking all about the church, about who we are, what we're doing right now, and what's in the future. And we want you to be a part of it. So we hope you guys enjoyed today's teaching, talking all about momentum. So check it out.
Years ago was 2016. Where were you 8 years ago today? What did your family look like? What were your kids like? How old were your kids 8 years ago? Where did you live 8 years ago? Right? You can't do it. Like you're trying to think. I see you doing the math in your head of all these things. What did life look like for you then? 2016, 4 years before COVID. Kids are younger if you had kids then. What did life and all of those things look like for you at that moment in time? So for us and our family, in 2016, which was 8 years ago, we came to a football game on a Friday night down at the pit. We didn't live here. We were transplants. We were just looking at the area, and Melissa grew up in a small town that high school football was a huge deal. I grew up in a much bigger area, but high school was still a big deal, and our kids where we were living just didn't have that experience. So we're like, let's find a great place and go see a football game. Let's just do something fun. So we drove down here on that Friday night with 3 kids in tow, and we walked into the pit, and it was my first time there. And if you're a newbie and you walk in at that end zone there, the stands are like up to your right, and then there's the big grass hill right there. Like the idea of walking into the stands is completely overwhelming to me. I'm like, it's a sea of people I don't know, and you expect me to go sit down next to them without assigned seats? I can't do that. We're going to sit here on the hill. So we sat uncomfortably on the hill that night while our kids rolled down the hill and had a ton of fun. We had parked over by that Tractor Supply, the strip mall there, walked across the street, 3 young kiddos in tow with us. And really, that night, I know we won, but really I don't remember much of those details. What I do remember is that as we're driving through the town, like everything's just painted out black and gold, and there's all the hype, all the energy, and we had a blast. And that was the night that I would say, like, we fell in love with that town. We didn't know this was going to be home for us, but we just knew, like, this was a special place. So 1 year after that, so that was the fall of 2016, the fall of 2017, I stood on our stage at our McDonough campus and just announced to them that we were going to leave and launch a campus in Forsyth. And wasn't really sure how that was going to go over. Wasn't sure if that was going to be supported or angry or what all those feels would be. But the people there were amazing. They celebrated it. They prayed with us. They gave towards it. Some of them that had been traveling from down here in Barnesville and Jackson up to our McDonough campus actually came up and said, hey, we want to be a part of this thing. Like it's closer. It's where we live, work, and play. It's where we do life. We want to be a part of this thing. So they joined in with us right away. So really then over the next 2 years, that 2017 to 2019, our family began to orient life around here. We didn't really live here yet, but we started to intentionally shop down here and go out to dinner down here. So we would travel down here just to go out to dinner. Eventually, we moved down here. We began making friends. We had the ice cream truck at that point. We just started taking the ice cream truck to all kinds of community events. So I was emailing people all the time, just randomly being like, hey, pass out free ice cream, and I'm not a creep, I promise. Just trying to do all of that just to have a way for us to serve the community. And then after that, as we started to gain some momentum and all of that, we hosted our first vision night, which I'll show you a little picture of here. There were about 30 of us that just sat in what used to be Simply Dance in the dance studio there, kind of in their lobby there. And we just talked about this dream we had. We had no building. We had no really anything. We just had about 30 of us that were hoping to do this thing. So we kind of casted that vision to them, shared that with them, and said, would you consider doing this with us? And they all said, yeah. They said, we're in. And then shortly after that, we began the hunt for finding a place. And it was forever. We actually had looked at this building and walked away from it for a year because we're like, this is crazy. It's too small. We can't make this work. Then we ended up coming back to it because there was no other place we could find. And we wrote a letter to the city saying, hey, would you give us permission to purchase a modular and put it out back? Don't you call it a trailer. It is a high-class modular learning experience. I said, would you allow us to put a modular in the back because that would give us another 1,400 square feet, just gives us a little bit more room. And they said yes. And when they said yes, we're like, all right, boom, this is where we'll be. This is where we'll launch. So we launched in here. We started doing all the work. So we've gutted this place. If you were ever in here before it was Momentum, it was nasty. So we had ripped out every piece of electrical in this building, just took down all the walls. We spent months working in here until eventually we got it to a blank slate where it was completely hollowed. So that was kind of our space. This was our beginnings. It was just this big blank space. And then as we started to finish out the inside, we started hitting those big milestones of like putting your name on the building. So that was a cool day to see the truck show up and they start installing all the letters. Here's the thing. A lot of you have heard that story. If you've been a part of Momentum for any time, if you've been at this campus for any time, you've heard either all of that story or pieces of that story before. But I think it's important for us to keep sharing that periodically because in a lot of ways, it's our origin story. And if you think about it, origin stories are powerful. Origin stories are the things that they help shape us, they define us, they guide us, they inspire us. And there's all kinds of origin stories. So like even when you think about cinema and things like that, like Superman has an origin story. You remember like Superman's origin story? He was on the planet of Krypton. The planet was going to like be doomed. It was going to be exploding. So his parents put him on this spaceship, sent him to Earth, and it crashes in rural America where Jonathan and Martha Kent discover him. They find him, they name him, and then they discover that this little boy that they've adopted and brought into their family has these superpowers, and they teach him to use his superpowers for good and use them to help other people. Or if you kind of spin into the same kind of genre, like Batman's got an origin story. Batman's name is Bruce Wayne, and his parents were murdered. And because of that, he came up with this persona of Batman. And the whole idea behind that persona of Batman was the idea of fighting injustices and fighting against criminals. But it's not just like media and cinema and comics that we find origin stories. We find origin stories all throughout the Bible. The book of Genesis is such a story of origins. That's why I love the book of Genesis. It just tells this incredible story of what our beginning was. So it's the origin story of Adam and Eve, and we see just in this couple, we see the ideas of early faith. We see the idea of community together, because even in the story of Genesis, God wasn't alone. He talks about us, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, all there in the creation account of it all. So we see community in there. We see decisions. We see that tension between good and evil. We see all of that in those origins of Adam and Eve. Or if you fast forward a little bit, the Jews back then and even the Jews today, every time they celebrate Passover, in a lot of ways, they're telling their origin story of what it looked like for them to make their way from being enslaved in Egypt through the Exodus, and it's the origin of them as truly a people and a nation. And that's a story that is told year after year after year because it shapes them and it guides them and it adds value. Or even if you think about Christ himself, there's origin story taught in that. If you remember on his last night when he's sharing a meal with his disciples, and he takes the bread and the wine, the communion that we'll celebrate later, he breaks all that, and do you remember what he tells them? He says, do this in remembrance of me. It's the idea of origin there. I'm starting something new, and I want you to keep doing this in remembrance of me, of what I've done and what I'm doing today. So here's the truth, is that you have an origin story. You and your family have as an origin story. There's things in your family that have shaped you and guided you and inspired you. There's things of your family members and parents that you want to be just like. And there's things in your family that you're like, not so much that. I don't really want that in my story, right? But it does. It guides and shapes us in those ways. So you have one and I have one, but the truth is we as a people have one. We as a church have this origin story. And since day one, going all the way back to 2005, when Bart and I started to meet in a coffee shop in Louisville, Kentucky, and just talk about and dream about and pray about starting a church where we really didn't know where it was going to be. At that point, we were looking at Destin, Florida, Baltimore, Maryland, or Henry County, Georgia. We really didn't know where it was going to be. We were just seeking the Lord's guidance, praying about it. We didn't have a name. We didn't have people in it with us. We had no finances in it. It was just praying towards what would be. And since that day, all the way back in 2005, our church's origin story has been marked by this risk-taking faith that leverages everything for the sake of the ones that don't know Jesus. Like leveraging it enough that we would get up and leave and move our home across the country to start something new with people that we didn't know yet and say, hey, would you come alongside us to do this for the ones that don't yet know Jesus? And what's been awesome is over the past 17 years in the life of our church as a whole, and we've seen it in Forsyth over the past 5 years over and over again, time and time again, what we've seen is people stepping into this story at different points. Like some of you have been with Momentum for many years predating the existence of this campus. And you were the ones that helped us be a part and launch this campus here. Some of you were here on our launch Sunday 5 years ago, and you're like, that's when your origin story began. Some of you kind of entered into the story a few months ago or maybe a year ago. That's when you entered into all of this. But time and time again, we've seen men, we've seen women, and we've seen students take this giant step of faith into this like unknown territory of doing whatever it takes to just reach the ones that don't know Jesus. I know some of us are story people, and I know some of us are data people. So I'm going to appeal to the nerds like myself for a minute. I just want to show you some numbers that really do amaze me. I'm going to go back to 21 because COVID kind of jacked everything up in the world, if you didn't know. So we kind of scrapped all of our attendance before then, started over in 21. Momentum runs off of a fiscal year. So August 1st of the calendar to July 31st of the next year. So 21 to 22, our average weekend attendance at this campus was 242. You roll it forward a year, and that takes a pretty good jump. It jumps up to 280. So there's this momentum growing at this campus. Then last year, we see another significant jump where we rolled into 368. And then we're only like 4 weeks, today's officially 5 weeks into this new year, but right now what we're seeing is our average weekly attendance is 451. Like, that's insane to me to see those kinds of numbers. But here's my bigger point, because those are good, but I don't really care too much about them. They guide us, they help us, they shape us, but they're not really everything to us. But here's the big thing to me is that stuff didn't just accidentally happen. It happened because of what Reggie said, where God was involved in things where we can try to plan and we can try to come up with this idea of what things are going to look like, and we could try to work hard and be diligent, but he's the one that just shows up and does incredibly more than we could ever ask or imagine. Things like that happen because you all and we all invite friends and family members who are searching for a church home or lost in life or they don't know Jesus. And we've taken that risk-taking step of just saying, hey, listen, I don't have all the answers, but come with me. I think this place will help you in the process of this. But that's not just happening on Sunday mornings. Like, I want to show you another realm because we don't count this in our numbers. I want to show you just what's happened at Moxie. So Moxie, a couple years ago, we averaged about 48 students. And I said a few weeks ago, I remember when if we would hit 20 in here on a Wednesday night, it felt like, boom, we hit critical mass. It was huge if we had 20. I remember the first time we hit like 28, and it was like, this is insane, even though us and the Tanners and the Cabes had like 10 of those kids. But it was like, boom, we hit 28 tonight. This is amazing. But then we started hitting 48, and I'm like, this is crazy. We're blowing the seams. And then the next year, we roll and we're hitting 80. And here's the crazy one. Our first 4 weeks of Moxie this semester, our average attendance has been 142. So when I tell you it's not just, and listen, those aren't like fake preacher numbers. Like, I don't even count them half the time. We recount them. Other people count them. We're constantly just like, did we get this right? Like, that doesn't include adults. That is just the students, sweaty, pre-testosterone, all of that stuff, occupying this building on a Wednesday night. But it's amazing. But here's the thing with this. I can't help but think that this right here is because of what took place before it in our origin story. Let me show you this picture. I don't know who wrote this, but in these walls of this building on all the studs are just different scriptures and prayers. And this one just says, pray for the students that will gather here. I love the idea that we didn't have students then. There were no students gathering, but somebody had the foresight to write that down on that stud and just say, let's be praying for the students that will gather here. So when I see our numbers in Moxie, which are amazing, I can't help but think it's because of things like that and the prayers that went into it. All right, let me go back into some more numbers for you. We don't talk about finances very often, but just so you know, we operate off of an actual real budget. So we have a finance team that helps with our budget. We craft the budget. We spend to the budget. We don't spend things outside of the budget unless it's a big need, and then we talk to the finance team about all of those things. Last year, we made budget, which has been a historical thing for Momentum. We always make budget. However, there's been seasons where that was a struggle for us. So in launching a campus, as you're trying to grow that campus, there were some tight years in that. But to be able to say that we made budget last year was a pretty great thing. Last year, in the past 20 months or so, we've served the ice cream truck at 37 different events, which has mean we've had more than 11,000 pieces of ice cream served out over those 37 events. And really about 106 different volunteers were engaged in that. That's pretty cool. When I think about the story of Momentum and being in the community, to say that we've served like 11,000 pieces of ice cream just to put a smile on somebody's face, 100 people stepping out and just doing something odd and different and saying, yeah, I'll serve on the ice cream truck this weekend and do this thing. Reggie's here talking about Kids Hope mentoring. So this was one of the cool numbers I just kind of added up. If you think about the mentors we've had in the past 2 years, they've spent over 700 hours mentoring at Hubbard just in the past 2 years. That's insane. That's a ton of hours of people pouring into the lives of children that really could use it. This year, if you know, you've been around with us, we've had 40 baptisms, which has been pretty insane just to see those weeks of baptism after baptism after baptism. So we've had 40 this year. In our life as a campus here, we've had about 103 baptisms total. So that's such an incredible thing when I look at those numbers and I see like 103 people who are making these decisions of this is either going to be my first step I'm taking and putting my trust in Jesus, or I've made that decision to follow Jesus, but I've never really wrestled out this baptism thing and it's time for me to submit and finally do that. I love just to see those kinds of things. So when I run through the data, because I like data, but when I think through the story as a whole and how this is kind of woven together, it so does remind me of the passage Reggie referenced, which is James 1:17, which says, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. It's the idea that he's not the one changing. He doesn't move around and shift like shadows do. He is constant and steady. And he chose us to give birth through the word of truth that we might be a kind of first fruits of all that he created. I love that picture that every good and perfect gift, every good and perfect thing that we've experienced as a campus and as a community has come down from the Father above. Truth be told, we couldn't have written this story had we tried. We had ideas of what this campus would look like, but there was no way we could actually script out how this was going to play out. There's parts of it that are simply too good. I would have completely underestimated. I wouldn't have expected it to play out this way. The good things we've seen here and experienced here are definitely a gift from the Lord. But here's the thing, is that that's in our past, and really we are moving into a new season. I'm fully expecting great things in the season ahead, but this season will look different. Next Sunday, we will go to 3 services, and I've been through this multiple times at our McDonough campus, and I want to set the bar straight so everybody knows. It will be different. I promise you it will be different. I'm not saying it will be bad, but it will be different. The first few weeks, it will feel bad. The first few weeks, you will think we were idiots, and you're going to be like, why did you just do this? Because it will shift around when people attend. It will make certain hours feel like they're completely empty. I promise you, if you come to 8:15, there will be about 12 of us there in the beginning, okay? It'll be real intimate. I might sit on the floor and just have a casual conversation with you, okay? It will be different. But what we've seen time and time again at our McDonough campus is that the Lord provides in this, and he moves in it, and what it does is it opens up seats and space for us to keep inviting our ones into this. So that starts next week. Really in the next 12 months, we'll be moving into a new building. And some of that's predictable. We know exactly kind of what that's going to look like. There's other parts of that are completely unpredictable. So for example, our first civil work for the building came in about 2 weeks ago. It was really, really, really high, much higher than we anticipated at all. So what we did was get some of the minds together that had been a part of this team from the beginning. We re-engineered some of this. We sent this back out to come up with something that was much more financially feasible for us in the realm of the civil work. In the meantime, what we've been doing is just going ahead and planning. So we've ordered construction materials, which we have a drop date of that of the week of November 4th. So those materials will be dropped out on the land. So when you drive by the land, you'll start seeing things accumulate and build up there. We have final architectural drawings right now. We're using those to get bids from contractors. So I'm going to share a timeline with you. Feel good about it, but I also know it's probably not perfect. It probably won't be this exactly. But really now through really the rest of September, we're finishing up these new civil plans and getting bids. The end of September, we're hoping to get our land disturbance permit. October-ish, we would love to begin site work, grading, utilities, all that kind of site work there. Ideally, mid-November, we'll start pouring some of that foundation. December, January, we'll be throwing things up, erecting the steel, some of that framing. January-ish, February-ish would be drywall, kind of all that interior work beginning before we start doing all the finished work, which if you've ever built anything before, a house, a building, a structure, you know the finished work is what takes forever. Like the building goes up like that, and then you're like, what is taking so long now? So that's where we will sit for months. We were originally hoping to be able to be in that building for Easter of next year. I'm still praying the miraculous, but I don't think that will happen. Right now, everybody's saying the absolute earliest we're in there is May, but more likely over the summer. But that's okay. It's going to be fine, and the Lord's going to provide on that. Here's my point is, regardless of what we can see with our eyes, we're just trusting that the Lord still has good things in store for us. In 1 Chronicles, there's a big section of scripture, and some of you this summer, if you were some of our volunteers, we walked through a little piece of this. I'm just going to hit a couple pieces here quickly. It's when King David is preparing to build the temple for the people of Israel, the community of faith there. King David had the vision for it, but the thing is he wasn't going to be the one that would complete it. So let me just tell you the story, the origin story of the temple. 1 Chronicles 22 says, David said to Solomon, who was his son, "My son, I had it in my heart to build a house for the name of the Lord my God, but this word of the Lord came to me. You've shed much blood and fought many wars. You are not to build a house for my name because you've shed much blood on the earth in my sight. But you will have a son who will be a man of peace and rest, and I will give him rest from his enemies on every side. His name will be Solomon, and I will grant Israel peace and quiet during his reign. He is the one who will build a house for my name. He will be my son, and I will be his father, and I will establish the throne of this kingdom over Israel forever." So King David is telling this to his son that I have this vision for the temple, but the Lord's told me explicitly I'm not the one to do this, that it's actually supposed to be you. This is going to be your thing. So I want to set you up and I want to help you in this, but this is your thing now to carry out. When you flip over a few chapters, 1 Chronicles chapter 29, it says, "Then King David said to the whole assembly," so he's gathered up the whole assembly of Israel, the leaders of Israel together, and he says, "My son Solomon, the one whom God has chosen, is young and inexperienced. The task is great because this palatial structure is not for man, but for the Lord God." I love this picture is that as David is commissioning his son to go lead this people into this endeavor, he realizes that in all of this, his son is young and his son is inexperienced, and he needs the wisdom of the community to come around his son in this. So he just says that honestly. He says, I love him, the Lord's chosen him, but he's young and inexperienced, and he needs you to come around them. So for us as a church, when we go back to January of this year, we hosted a gathering called Community Conversations for several people that were leading and volunteering in different ministries. And at that, we just talked through, this was on the very front end of all of this building stuff. And we said, what is us? What is momentum? What do you think we need in a building like this? And they said things like, it needs to be intentional. It needs to be welcoming and feel like home. It needs to be multi-purpose. It needs to have great outdoor space because we're on such a great piece of property there. It needs to have a focus on next gen because our students and children's ministries are just blowing up. So it has to have room for them. It has to be created for the community in mind. So we kind of took all of that to heart and walked forward in this. To me, that's so much of what David's doing with his son and the community of faith there in Israel when he says, like, we need the wisdom of the whole assembly. But I also love that David said that this place, the structure, isn't for man, but it's for the Lord. We're doing it for his name. So for me, this season for us together, it's not my season, it's our season together, is about us responding to what the Lord is doing, what he's already done, what he's doing currently, while also trying to remain flexible to what he might do in the future that we actually can't fully see how that'll play out yet. So I'm going to show you some pictures. Here's my disclaimer on it, is they are renderings, but not exact replicas. So there are pieces of them that might not be exactly the same the way it plays out. There's going to be parts where I don't show a whole lot of the outside space because, dollars. You can't just do everything at once. We have hopes and we have dreams for the outside space, but that's probably a future phase of it. All right, let me show you. I'll go civil schematic. All right, so this is our 28 acres off of Bensonham Road. If you're not familiar, it's really the Ingalls exit, but the other side of the highway. So cross over the highway, turn right on Bensonham, and you'll see it up on the left. So the yellow box is our building. The space in front of that is all the parking. And you'll see how we're just trying to intentionally design where buildings might go should we need to add on, expand. They'd be on the, I guess if you're looking at it, the right side of it. All right, next picture, please. This is rendering of the front of the building for us. I don't know that it will exactly play out all this way, but this is a thing we're looking at. We like the idea of something that looks multi-purpose, that looks functional. We don't want a place that has just a big steeple on it. So this is kind of the color work and the schemes that we're kind of looking down that lens right now. All right, let's look inside of it quick. All right, so this is architectural of inside the lobby. So when you walk in the lobby, to your right is auditorium, all of that space. To your left is all of our children's space. So if you walk in and look right, that's just kind of the architectural elevation of the lobby. I'll just throw you a very sterile rendering of kind of some of that space. So big guest central there, doors going in, light out the back because that's going to be big glass windows out the backside. Again, it's all renderings right now. There's no furnitures, there's no colors. It's just, I want you to see how these things are coming to life in the process of it all. All right, next one we should have, zoom in on auditorium. So for a frame of reference, that is about a 400-seat-ish auditorium. Right now we're sitting in about 211 chairs crammed in all on the back on the side. So doubling our number of chairs, but it's much more than double this space. It's a much bigger auditorium. We will probably, in the beginning, intentionally kind of curtain some of that down because one of the things I know we will miss is much headache as we have as navigating in this building, there's something pretty great about being together and rubbing elbows and bumping into each other. So we will do things to intentionally make it feel small in there. All right, I think if we come from here, we go back out. Just a render. I love in the architect's rendering of the auditorium. Number one, I don't know why on earth the chairs would ever be blue. And number two, the fact that the dude has a suit on. I wore a suit one time and y'all made fun of me. So never again. So I'm like, that's just a stupid picture, but I'm showing you the stupid picture. But just the idea of we're trying to be very intentional of, even you'll see stage height. Like we have a big thing. We don't want our stage to be super high. We're kind of looking down and lording over people. We just want it to be part of the conversation. So we're trying to take all of that into the concept of design where it feels very communal and close and personal. All right, I think next picture takes us back out. Lobby. So this is lobby. When you walk in, right was auditorium. This is left kind of looking towards children's area. Then we'll zoom in on children's area here. So there's rendering of that. Children's check-in. There's a mezzanine up there, which will be some flex space that can be used for Moxie life groups. It can be used for the older elementary kids when they break out into their life groups because there's a secured hallway for them to get up there. And then we'll just have some like multi-purpose office areas up there for the week as well. Children's checking down there. And then I think next one we actually zoom in on children's areas. So our Kidmo room there, that big blue room there, is a hair bigger than this room, which is a much big improvement from where our Kidmo room is right now. So if you'll notice on these plans, we have no offices in this building. There was a version of this plan that had lots of offices in, and we just said, honestly, we have way more kids than we do staff. We'll figure things out. We'll pull up plastic tables and sit wherever we need to sit. We'd rather the space get dedicated to children. So we did auditorium well, and we did children's. We're trying to do that really well and provide very big spaces for them to gather in. Do we have any more pictures after that one? Oh, yeah. Okay, this is my favorite part. I'm just telling you right now. This will be a future phase. Off the back of the building, this summer, I was at a place with some friends, and there was this giant metal overhang where we sat, like this huge just area with picnic tables and those really large fans, you know, the ones I'm talking about? Those huge fans under there, and it was just high top tables and picnic tables. So we went back to the architect and we said, we would love to create some outdoor space off of the kitchen area and off of the student and children's areas where we could do that out there. So Katie English, who's kind of doing a lot of the early design stuff, has sketched this up. Then we're handing that over to the architects. But that is, I'm pumped for that one. I think that would be an incredible thing. That won't be phase one, but it's a thing we're planning for and praying for the rest of the phases of it all. The reason we're trying to do so much children's space is because we really do have a core belief that we want to help teach this next generation to live for what matters most. The fact is they're searching and chasing to live for all kinds of things. They've been gifted and wired in different ways. So how can we come alongside of them and teach them, hey, use your gifting and use your wiring to pursue whatever career it is you want to pursue, but do that and live for what matters most in the process of doing it. So we're putting a ton of energy in there. I had somebody say to me over the summer, if you think about it right now, we have a young adults life group that's led by Matt and Amanda Harner. And that is a group of like just post-high school, early college, early career age-ish people. And this person said, if you think about it, like those are that next wave that will come and bring their families here. And then we even got talking more, like if you think about it, like many of us who have middle schoolers and high schoolers here right now, in the next 10 to 15 years, which I know sounds crazy, but it's really not that far away, they will be marrying, they will be having children, and they will be bringing your grandbabies to Momentum. That was an incredible thought to me. So it's like, let's put a ton of energy into doing this well. All right, let me give you just some numbers, data, because I know things don't come free. So all of this stuff, estimated construction cost, really is about $4.5 million. But from that, really what's happened is we've been able to pay the land in full. In that price, there's about a 10% contingency, so we're trying to budget extra money just in case, like, you know, things go up. All the land is entirely paid in full. To this point, we've paid roughly $350,000 in all the civil, architectural, early plans, all of those kinds of fees, construction supplies, all of that kind of stuff we've had to do. Paid about that much so far. Here's the incredible thing for us right now is we're also sitting on $2.3 million in the bank right now, which is such an incredible thing for us. That's one of those things that's so good I could have never written it into this story. I would have never dreamed that. I would have never even known to ask for something like that. But to be able to say that we are sitting at a place where we have that amount of money in bank to be able to do this is an amazing thing, because it also lines up with our heart is we want to be as debt-free as possible. Because with debt, it reduces your ability to make ministry-minded decisions, because now you're worried about covering this bill or that bill. So we're in such a good place, which is a reminder to me of every good and perfect gift comes from above. All of that money right there doesn't include what's dedicated towards an emergency fund for our church. We've got money set aside for an emergency fund. It doesn't include any of McDonough's assets, and it also doesn't include about $150,000 that we have set aside for missions. So that is just money that is dedicated towards this project. So for us, really, it leaves us a difference of $2.2 million. So the question is then, what do we do for that? And the reality is I think we have three options. The first one is we could go out and get a loan for that. We 100% get a loan for that. We could try to fundraise all of that, or I think we can do a combination of both. And reality is I don't think we should get a loan for that whole thing. I think it would change how we do ministry to such a level. We wouldn't have the freedom to respond to needs in the community that happen all the time. I think raising that amount of money would be very, very difficult. The Lord might be able to do that. I know he could do it, but I can't do that. I'm just saying, like, that's a huge sum of money. So in my brain, for us, this looks like doing a combination of both of those things. I think realistically, our campus in specific needs to look to raise about 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, somewhere in that realm over the next 2 years. And then it would leave us somewhere in the range of 800 to $1 million to finance. And the reason I like that number of 800 to $1 million for us to finance is because that breaks out to exactly what we're paying for lease right now here. So it would allow us to move into a new building with a mortgage payment that we're already used to paying, which is the size of our lease payment, because I know when you move into a place like that, you're going to have expenses there that we don't have here, such as landscaping and caring for HVAC, that kind of equipment, that kind of stuff. So I think it just gives us some margin. So I have 3 asks of you right now. And the first one is just that you would lock arms with us in this idea of vision and generosity. So here's how the rest of this Chronicles passage plays out. King David says, with all of my resources, I've provided for the temple of my God, gold for the gold work, silver for the silver, and bronze for the bronze, iron for the iron, and wood for the wood, as well as onyx for the setting, blah, blah. All these things he's provided, right? Besides in my devotion to the temple of my God, I now give of my personal treasures. So what he's speaking of before is Israel, in a sense, had savings of all of these things that he's dedicated towards the temple. And now he's saying, from my personal treasure, I'm also adding these things into this. I'm so committed to this, I'm willing to add in, and then he lists all the things. 3,000 talents of gold, 7,000 talents of silver, blah, blah, all of those things. So the point here is David is trying to clearly lead the way in vision and generosity of what's taking place. So here's all I want you to know. I want you to know that Melissa and I are in. Yes, I stood at McDonough campus 7 years ago and said, hey, we're going to go plant for Scythe. This is home for us. This is where we feel like we're to be. Since 2 years before Momentum ever even existed, dating all the way back to 2005, we've given a dime off of every dollar and more that we've ever made to Momentum. We are so beyond in. But here's the bigger point, is the generosity didn't stop with David. It says the leaders of the families and the officers of the tribes of Israel, the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, and the officials in charge of the king's work gave willingly. Like nobody twisted their arm, nobody guilted them into it. He just said, here's what we're doing. Would you play a part of this? And they gave willingly. They gave toward the work on the temple of God 5,000 talents, 10,000 talents, here's what they gave. And then it says, anyone who had precious stones gave them to the treasury of the temple. The people rejoiced at the will and response of the leaders, for they had given freely and wholeheartedly to the Lord, and David the king also rejoiced greatly. The generosity of these leaders now, starting with David, then to those leaders, it infected and it influenced and inspired the community. And really what I want you to know is that's what McDonough did for us years ago. They started this campus for every one of you that they didn't know. We have good friends that are sitting right over here from our McDonough campus that were a part of this from that time being, and they've served and they've visited and they've given towards this for people that they would never even know because they believed in it so much. And what I love in this Chronicle story is David noticed that and he gave thanks. It says, David praised the Lord in the presence of the whole assembly, saying, praise be to you, the Lord, the God of our father of Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor, for everything in heaven and on earth is yours. Yours, Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. In your hands are the strength and the power to exalt and to give strength to all. Now, our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name. But who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? Everything comes from you, and we have given only what comes from your hand. Which is why my first ask is that you would just lock arms with us in vision and generosity. Here's my second ask, is that you would commit to not only just praying for what's ahead, but also praising God for what he's done here already. I mean, it is spectacular the way he's been moving here the past 5 years. It's almost so spectacular that when we can do baptism after baptism after baptism, it feels like just a normal Sunday. But if you step away, it is nothing short of incredible. And I think we often pray towards what we need instead of just giving thanks for what he's done. So I'm asking for you to not only lock arms with us, but also to lock arms in praising him for what he's done. And then my third ask is that you would just read this passage, this 2 Chronicles 29, verses 1 through 17, for like the next week, the next 7 days. And just asking God what he might do in the next 24 months, how he might reach you to reach the ones in your lives. Commit, pray, and read. And then here's what our hope is, really over the next 2 years, because the truth is we have a great start in the bank for all of the projects. What we're going to aim for is just over the next 2 years is hitting 4 milestone markers. We've done Christmas offering for the past few years, and our Christmas offering will dump on 1 week. And last year we announced it the first Sunday of December, and by the end of December we had raised $250,000, which was a crazy thing. So we said, let's just actually be intentional and plan. So we're going to do 4 special offerings over the next 2 years. December 24, May 25, December 25, and May 26, which is crazy to even think about 2026. But we're going to do those 4 special offerings over those 4 years, and we're going to pray that the Lord would meet us and allow us to walk into this thing as debt-free and possible. Here's the thing I know without a shadow of a doubt. Good things are in store for us, but it requires us to boldly walk into them, just like we did 5 years ago. Now, let me just remind you, we didn't know exactly what we were walking into 5 years ago, but we were walking expectantly. Just check out this video quick.
So Seth and I are here in Forsyth, Georgia tonight, and we're ready to share some exciting news about our third campus. It's not just a dream, it's not just a plan, it's becoming reality. And behind us right there is 7,000 square feet that we just signed the lease on to be the home of our Momentum Forsyth campus. We couldn't be more excited. And so our landlord has been amazing. They've given us 9 months free rent before we even have to pay a monthly rent. It's just, God has just been working. We've got architects working to help us design the space, and work's gonna start very, very soon. But we're so excited. This is gonna be the home to Momentum Forsyth.
All right, so here's what we're shooting for. We're aiming for an August 4th launch. That would be our official launch Sunday. Of course, we're gonna have a lot of things happening before then. So tonight we had our largest dream night ever so far, and it's been an awesome, awesome night. We shared with them the timeline leading up towards this August 4th with monthly dream night gatherings till then, ways we're gonna serve in the community, so we're really, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and what Seth even tell you, like, there was Momentum people here tonight, but there was Forsyth people, and people invited friends and neighbors, and it was so cool. And I know in this operating series, we've been talking about the idea of the ecclesia, this gathering. It's not just a place, but if you look throughout the Bible, God always used space. And we're just asking God to use this space in big ways. So it's coming, Momentum Forsyth.
It's crazy because I had much less gray hair then. But truthfully, I didn't know many of you. A lot of us didn't even know each other. We didn't know what we were really stepping into, but what we knew was that we were stepping into something special. And today, we are starting into a new chapter. So as we close, I'm just going to ask you to reflect on a few things, all right? My first question is, in your time at Momentum, whether you've been here like the Cabes for 15 years, or you've been here for 5 years since that launch Sunday, or maybe for you it's just been the past few months, the question is the same. How has your faith grown at Momentum? How's your faith grown in this period of time? Or often when we come in here, we're on the arm of somebody else. We sit with somebody else and we kind of do life with other people. So similar question, but a little bit different. How have you seen the faith of someone else grow in their time here? For you, it might be a family member that you've invited, or a kiddo, or a student. It might be a friend that you invited, but how have you seen their faith grow in their time here? Or tagging on to Reggie's question that he asked at the beginning, what is one of your best experiences or memories that you have from your time here? All right, last question. How awesome would it be for you to be able to play a part in creating those memories and experiences for the ones in your life that are far from the Father, or that maybe don't know Jesus? That's what he's invited us into. You've had those experiences. You've had those memories. And this is an opportunity for us to create that for somebody else. Would you pray with me? Father God, I'm thankful for what you've done. The way you've worked here has been mighty. And we're humbled by it, and we're in awe of it. But God, I also know that this is just the beginning for us. So God, I pray that you would lead and that you would guide. God, I pray that you would keep our hearts humble. And God, I pray that you would continue to do more than we could ever ask or imagine. And God, every time we see you provide and do those things, God, I'm praying that we would be reminded that you are the provider of all of those good and perfect gifts. And God, we love you. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Hey, we hope you guys enjoyed today's teaching. If you have any questions about today's message, you can always email us at info@momentumcc.org. If giving is a part of your week, you can still give online. You can visit momentumcc.org/giving. That's a part of your rhythm. If it's how you worship, please visit that today. Also, if you are new, if you've never been on our YouTube channel or ever been to one of our campuses, visit momentumcc.org/connect. We want to get to know who you are. Also, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel or follow us on podcasts, please do that today. And if you share this just makes this message go further on the internet, and that would help us a ton. Other than that, we hope you guys have a great week. We hope to see you in person. I want to cordially invite you to one of our campuses. You can visit us at our McDonough campus or our Forsyth campus. You can always check us out at momentumcc.org to learn more. Other than that, we hope you guys have a great week. We will see you next Sunday.